Today, I want to talk about the prophecy of C.S. Lewis. I've been kind of studying his whole life the past year, and he has made some striking observations that I believe are very worth discussing. Now, I would not call Lewis a prophet, but in the 1940s, he made a striking observation about basically the momentum of human progress and kind of warning its grave danger when this progress is partnered with sin. See, left unchecked, advancement does not elevate humanity, but rather amplifies its corruption, accelerating the spread and speed of rebellion. This biblical reality is captured in the story of Babel, like kind of perfectly, where the collective power of humanity, unhindered in its ambition, turned not toward the glory of God, but towards its self-exaltation. And it had a lot to do with language, with words. G.K. Beale, he's a biblical scholar. He actually makes a connection that I think is pretty vital for this conversation between the Tower of Babel and the Garden of Eden. In his book, The Temple and the Church's Mission, he makes this connection pretty perfectly. He talks about the building of the Tower of Babel, how it's an attempt to get to heaven. And he shows how Eden, the spread of Eden, is a lateral progress. It's going throughout the earth. But the Tower of Babel, on the other hand, is doing its own kind of path towards heaven. It's contrary to the vocation of God. Lewis echoes this warning in his book, The Abolition of Man. We're going to get to it later. But Beale observes that Eden was not merely a garden. This is important with his connection with the Tower of Babel, but the first temple, the place where God's presence literally dwelt with humanity and where Adam and Eve were commissioned to expand its borders until all creation became God's dwelling. The original Edenic vocation was to extend God's rule and presence across the earth. The Tower of Babel, however, like I said, stands in a complete counterfeit to this call, a completely different direction. You see, the tower was an inverted temple project where humanity sought to build its own sacred space, with its top in the heavens, it says, in order to reach the divine apart from God. Rather than magnifying God's name, they strove to make a name for themselves. This is a direct quote concerning the Tower of Babel from the Bible. They were trying to grasp kingship. They were trying to literally gain the sacred presence on their own terms. In Beale's reading, Babel thus represents fallen humanity's attempt to manufacture the kingdom of heaven in rebellion, while the true kingdom restores the Edenic calling to spread God's glory to the ends of the earth. The kingdom of heaven in Christ reverses Babel's corruption of Eden. At Babel, God scattered the nations by confusing their tongues, literally distorting their language, a judgment on humanity's prideful attempt to build a counterfeit temple and seize heaven on their own terms. See, at Pentecost, however, God pours out his spirit. The disciples, they proclaim the gospel in languages that they did not know to literally all nations. You see, it's the undoing of the Tower of Babel. What Babel divided, Pentecost literally unites. Not through human effort, but through God's Spirit, forming a new temple made of living stones, you and I. This is where Lewis comes into play, okay? So C.S. Lewis, recognizes something about language, very akin to the dangers that fell after the Tower of Babel, the loss of meaning. Now, of course, Babel did not make men lose their meaning, but God did strike them with confusion. He struck them with miscommunication. He stripped them in a way of their ability to see, or I should say, hear the truth. With deconstruction of language, men could not make any step forward into progress. Their attempt to build to heaven and to claim their pure ethics, their pure paradise, you could say their power, was a hurried mess and an undoing of mankind's purpose. They wanted paradise without the one who makes it so. This is where the abolition of man comes in. See, Jack, his close friends called him C.S. Lewis. Jack argues that when words are emptied of objective reference, meaning, or understanding, the word itself, the world itself, begins to thin. Meaning is not merely descriptive, but a participation. It trains the human soul to perceive reality rightly. Hence, why God chose to show himself through the Word, the glory of the Word. He communicates to us through the Bible. When language no longer points beyond itself, we lose not only shared understanding, but shared vision. Things remain materially present, but they no longer disclose their substance. And this is vital to understand. Just as atoms describe the physical composition of an object without explaining what it is, words stripped of meaning name realities without granting sight. Do you hear me? Lewis shows that this loss is not neutral. It leaves humanity disoriented, unable to see things as they are, vulnerable to manipulation precisely because their perception of itself has been compromised. This is why Lewis's diagnosis of men without chests in his work, The Abolition of Man, is so central. The chest for Lewis is the seat of trained affection, the place where reason and appetite are properly joined through rightly ordered loves. When meaning collapses, the chest collapses with it. People may still think and desire, but they no longer see rightly. They know facts without wisdom and feel impulses without direction. Such men are easily ruled because they cannot recognize the value when they encounter it. The Abolition of Man gives theological and philosophical context to the danger of lost meaning. A humanity that cannot perceive substance cannot resist corruption. It does not need to be conquered by force. It can be reshaped simply by redefining the words through which it sees the world. We sadly see this playing out now. I actually had a conversation recently with Father Nazari. He told me about literally walking through the Getty with his children. The Getty is honestly a beautiful museum. It houses actually pieces of Christian art from the 14th century, and the Getty is unique in the sense that it allows you to walk through the history of art. But there's something sobering, something that Father Nazari actually pointed out to me, that his children pointed out to him. They saw the loss of meaning. Once they ended the museum, the gallery, they had a conversation. And Father Nazari, he asked his children, "What did you see?" His children responded, "Deconstruction, losing of being, losing of our image, because we are losing our language. Over time, we have deconstructed who we are, and art is always a representation of who we are." It's kind of a, you could say, a reference point to the thought and what is valued in a society. As humanity fractures, so does its art. Father Nazari said something very striking in this conversation with me. He said, pornography is the loss of image. It's the loss of art. It's the loss of meaning. And again, this is completely parallel with our literature, with our words, with our poetry. We are losing value because we're losing definition. When he said this, I responded, it's not only accepted, it's actually celebrated. You see, the deconstruction of holiness of word is now painted as liberation, when in reality, it is our undoing. This is a quote from C.S. Lewis himself. "If man chooses to treat himself as raw material he will be." My gosh. Thank you, Jack. Allow this to be a display and evidence of the power of a word. I've grown up in circles where the common trope is that the power of life and death is in the tongue. This is often quoted to be something serious, not because the theological or philosophical implications of a word are important, like C.S. Lewis is describing in The Abolition of Man, but because many people, and people in my life, well, I hope you're enjoying the video, you nerd. I want you to know there's more nerdy content for you. If you click the link in my description, you'll actually see Theos University, okay? Theos University is a library of theological content that's completely accessible for you. Peter Craif's on there, right? Some of the best theologians. Dr. Chris Palmer is on there, a Greek theologian. I mean, it's just really good stuff. I think that you should check it out. Check it out today. Use code theology, all caps. It's a great resource, especially if you're a nerd, which you are. I know you are, so do it. Click the link in the description. But because many people, and people in my life, they think that it is the manifestation of power to speak from nothing into something, the ability to create. But that's paganism, okay? That's not what this verse is saying. This verse is weighty and true, not because it's giving evidence to this low-level paganism, but because words do literally have power. Not the power to create, not from us. We are sub-creators. We're parallel creators, as Tolkien would describe. It calls forth essence, words do, in nature. It tells us what something is. God's word has the power to create from nothing. We have the power of perception. Our language puts things into accordance with how we view them. So, AKA, we believe what we hear because by hearing, we perceive what the sound is. If the song I am singing is liberation, and we join to that tune, we will then see bondage and destruction of being as liberation and construction of our being, not because the essence of the thing has changed, but because the song has changed and we have believed its words. You understand me now? Jordan Peterson argues that lying, changing something, breaking what it actually is, saying something is what it is not merely immoral, but it's an assault on reality itself. Because reality is structured toward truth. And when a lie is introduced, the world must be bent to accommodate something false, requiring further lies, distorted perception, and eventual collapse. And so even though people use different meanings for words and redefine definitions, I cannot express this enough. It does nothing to change the word, but it breaks the user. The one who beholds what is set in stone for themselves does not move the stone. They break themselves against it because God is the one who put it there. This directly relates to the abolition of man because Lewis warns that when words lose their grounding in objective meaning and are used to reshape perception rather than name reality, humanity does not gain freedom but gradually unmakes its own image, reducing itself to something formless and allowing yourself to be manipulated. It makes us unhuman. But the logos, the pure word, the logic, thank God for God. Jesus Christ has spoken, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. Jack's prophecy has manifested in the strictest sense of the word, but so will Jesus. He is coming back, my friends. Aslan is on the move, so hold fast and use your words rightly. There is a truth to our world. There is a truth that the Lord has spoken. God has built our universe, what we know, on a firm foundation that cannot be shifted, that cannot be changed. Our words matter, not because they speak something into existence from nothing, but because you get to name what God has created. It is the same vocation from the garden. When Adam was naming the animals, we too name what surrounds us, and we best not lie when we do it. Our words matter. Speak rightly, speak wisely, and believe God's forever and ever. Amen.